Yo, yo, let's get it.
The presentation in EA Sports UFC 5 elevates the series to a more authentic experience. Powered by the Frostbite engine, players will see, hear, and feel why UFC 5 is as real as it gets.
I love that. I love that. In the armbar, I talked about that thing.
To the deep dive into the presentation of EA Sports UFC 5. Let's take a look at the features that creates UFC 5's new presentation, including the Frostbite engine, visual effects, new in-game cinematics, advanced fighter likeness, cinematic KO replays, and authentic finishes.
Yes,
My name is I'm a Boxer, a part of the design council for UFC 5 and an EA Sports UFC content creator. I was able to interview EA's art director of UFC 5, Kurt Gibbons, to explain the new presentation and how it will impact the user experience.
I would say the first thing you're going to see that's going to be impactful and the players are going to feel is our walkout. We have new dynamic lighting with Frostbite engine. Just the whole presentation, lighting and
Looks
rendering
good,
and new player and our updated players is just amazing. During production, we were comparing real life UFC presentation with our game, and it was hard to tell the difference. So I think that's something that fans are going to love of the game.
Here we go.
Once you get in, I think again you're going to see the players, the fighters looking amazing with all of our new lighting and rendering technology and our strand-based hair. And then once you get into the fight and see all the impact with damage, I just think it's going to be incredible. And all that stuff we couldn't have done before.
I can see Dr. Stoppage
with
coming
hands-on
right there.
experience with the game. Once you get deep into the fight and both fighters are damaged, you feel that real impact system.
You do.
As a whole, that's when you experience the next level of immersion.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you said as a whole, because again, all the team worked together, from audio team, lighting and rendering, art team, presentation and camera team. We all work together to try to create really powerful game experiences
Former champ
for UFC.
Hey, this thing look clean.
Frostbite introduces a new fluid physics and particle system. How will this enhance the user's gameplay experience?
So with Frostbite, we get our new particle system. It's called the emitter graph, and that's a GPU VFX system, allowing us to render individual particles of blood and sweat. What's really neat too is the blood will land onto the mat. And you're actually going to see the blood build up over time. So we couldn't have done that previously, and you're going to see just beautiful particles with blood and sweat across the game. And it's all dynamic and builds up during the game based on your damage or how much you've been sweating, how long the fight goes.
I found it impressive that the mat captured the blood and the sweat from the fighters at the location where the damage actually occurred. So by the end of the fight, you can have a completely different mat from when you started, telling a story about what happened during that fight, and it adds to that gameplay experience.
It does.
And that Boxer, that's so awesome to hear that you felt that way, because that was actually our intent. And we actually talked about the story of the map, based on actually making you feel like there was fights previous to the fight that you're in. And then again, the damage that occurs during the fight, it builds up
both
on the player, but also on the map. And there is a story there, and that also gets backed up by our commentary and audio as well. So it's really a holistic experience that is, very powerful. And it's, I think it's going to make us as developers feel really good that you felt that when you played.
Okay, players always talk about the importance of making strikes feel more realistic and impactful when they land. How does the Frostbite engine in UFC 5 help address this concern?
So again, this is a holistic approach from the team. We all work together to try to make impact as powerful as possible for our players. So the first thing is animation. With animation, we worked all of our striking animations, as well as within Frostbite, we have our physics and procedural animation, which just in animation itself makes it feel more powerful. But then we also reworked our facial deformation system, which again makes it feel better when you impact another player, another fighter. Also, again, we talked about our visual effects, so you get that upon impact. And then our audio, we added new audio with more crunching effects and that sort of thing. Really make the whole system more powerful and impactful. And I think when you play, you really feel it again with all of our blood and particles all summing up into just a great, powerful experience for impact.
Advanced fighter likeness.
In UFC 4, we had some great character models, but in UFC 5, it takes it to a completely new level.
It does.
How has the Frostbite engine improved fighter likeness in UFC 5?
So that is something we put a huge amount of effort into. Again, obviously the fighters of UFC are the center of the game, and we made some amazing improvements. Like if you were to compare UFC 4 models to UFC 5 models, it's strikingly improved and better. So one of the big things that we did is brought in a new strand-based hair system, and what you'll see in terms of the player movement is how the hair is lit so much more realistic and moves so much more realistic while you're playing, and it made a huge difference. Also, if you look at the lighting and rendering, we also have something called the dual lobe shader that affects skin and how sweat and blood rolls across the skin. We put a huge amount of effort into the skin of the fighters.
Let's get it.
To make it feel more realistic.
Okay, Alex.
And believable.
Sean.
Finally, less about Frostbite, but more again about the attention and care that our art team put into these fighters. Is we work the geometry and the texture detail with every fighter. So
see, Brian,
all those things sum up to be really powerful. The last point that we did that again makes our fighter likeness stronger than UFC 4 and previous UFC games is we have a technology called Shapeshifter, which allows us to modify the bodies to again try to be closer to the real likeness of a fighter. So all together, just a really great work by our character team to create amazing likenesses for UFC 5, and I hope our players are gonna love it. I think they will.
Yeah. New in-game cinematics.
When we talk about new in-game cinematics for UFC 5, can you highlight some of the notable improvements since UFC 4?
With the walkouts, you're actually going to see 3 new things that make our walkouts more authentic than ever in UFC 5. So the first thing is our face rig system. So we have a new facial animation system that allows us to have more detail and subtle human animation, which you'll see throughout the walkout.
Clean.
The second thing is Frostbite cameras. So we are using Frostbite cameras that has a more realistic camera lens, and along with new cameras themselves and new editing, putting that all together into a really powerful experience. The third thing that I think, again, you're going to see is the dynamic lighting and all the lighting and rendering throughout the walkout. So again, that goes back to the player likeness and the skin and how light moves across the skin. And finally, I guess the whole choreography of the whole experience with the dynamic lights. So we're turning lights off and on.
That's cool. And
all true to the authentic experience of the UFC walkout. I love them.
Hey, this thing is clean,
of what
bro.
we accomplished for those walkouts for UFC 5.
Gotta check it out. Gotta get it if you want to. Cinematic KO replays. Hey, that thing is lit.
The new cinematic replay system in UFC 5 really stands out.
Yeah.
I know the content creators are going to enjoy making some amazing thumbnails from the replay system. Can you talk about what has improved about the cinematic replay system since UFC 4?
Yeah, so I have to say I love our cinematic knockout replays. I think it turned out to be kind of the perfect blend between cinematic cameras and procedural dynamic cameras. So we couldn't have done it without Frostbite. So we're using dynamic Frostbite cameras that will dynamically compose depending on the action. Furthermore, that we have in UFC 5 that we didn't have in UFC 4 is we actually have knowledge of the action in the replay. So we know whether it's a right fist or a left fist, whether it's a right kick or a left kick, and we know where it hits. And due to that, we're able to place the cameras to be the most compelling and the most dramatic. Add to
That's
that,
cool.
we put a lot of work into our slow motion replay.
Looks just like
getting our
gameplay.
strikes
Yeah.
and animation
And realistic.
smoother through slow motion, as well as all of our simulation, which is hair and clothing. We updated that, and then finally
the
again,
hair is
our
moving,
blood
everything, slow
and
motion.
sweat particles, along with a few kind of really cool custom blood particles just for that next
I
gen
see it.
knockout replay
Dropping.
moment.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. Authentic
Another
finishes.
feature new to the presentation in UFC 5 are authentic finishes. Can you talk about some of the ways a fight can end differently in UFC 5 than it could in UFC 4?
So one of the ways I think is like super exciting, emotionally compelling is doctor stoppages.
Doctor
So
stoppages.
again, that ties into our damage system. In the art, we actually have 8 regions for cuts, swelling, and bruising, and we have 5 levels of progression for that. I think one of our rendering engineers came up with the math, and we have about 64,000 possible combinations that you could run into. So
people's
as
eyes.
you are damaging your opponent,
like it's
at some
closed.
point the damage level will get to a place where the doctor will come in and stop the
Yeah.
fight and
It
check
gets
you
bad,
out.
man.
And in that presentation, again, new because of Frostbite in UFC 5, is we have some dynamic camera presentation. We have 6 areas that we can focus the camera on for the damage, and there you're going to see really good views of the cuts and the blood and the bruising and the swelling. And then again, the game will analyze how much damage you have taken,
You good,
and then the
John?
doctor
You
will
good?
decide, hey, let's continue the fight,
Yeah,
or we'll stop the
it going.
fight.
Yeah.
Doctor stoppages are more than presentation. They are now a part of the strategy. You can be behind in a fight, but your opponent could be severely damaged in a specific area which you can target.
Facts.
So even when behind, you still can create a direct path to victory.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks great, but I think what's also cool is, like you kind of alluded to, is there's a new level of strategy that we didn't used to have from a gameplay
more
perspective.
strategies.
So
I love
again,
it.
Visuals and gameplay
Submissions.
working together to create a new
Oh, I
powerful
love
experience for
this.
our
I
players.
love this. Yo.
With all of the presentation and animation updates, along with the new audio
Here we
effects,
go.
rendering, and
Get 'em.
lighting,
The darts.
also with Frostbite elevating the overall gameplay experience, I'm more than excited for the release of UFC 5.
It's
See you
going
in the
down.
octagon.
It's going down, man. Let's go.